let's now bring in our tool that we have built to help people understand negative gearing. So I'm now going to grab this and bring this across. And we can see here what I've got inside our Moorr platform is this gearing analysis tool that I've now placed myself on. And I've put a couple of people, so I've preset it, the couple of people, and obviously you can move things around here in terms of that. So I've just set it at 150 for the first person, 80,000 for the second person, property ownership, so that splits out the ownership between owners, purchase price 800,000, capital growth 6%, loan to value ratio 80, interest rate 6%, yield 3.75, rental growth rate of 4.5%, holding costs 1.25, and then holding cost inflation. And you can see it's calculated down the bottom, the marginal tax rate. So that's the starting point, 39 and 32, as part of that particular story. And I can see here is the story here, where I've got the, when I hover over each one of these points, you can see I've got with negative gearing and without negative gearing in terms of the after-tax cash flows. So that's the contribution that we were talking about before here. So obviously the person who doesn't get negative gearing will get that carried forward benefit. So make no mistake, it's still exactly the same in terms of the overall tax loss that I can claim. It's just the timing of that loss is different. So, and that timing of that loss can be important for some people who need that additional cash flow to stay in the market. But if you're in a position, a fortunate position where you've got some solid cash flow coming through, then you don't necessarily need to be able to do that. So you can see here in terms of the property value, it's also worked out the loan, the equity that I've made over time. And if I scroll down a little bit more, I've got a 30-year projection here where I can actually then start to say, well, what were my contributions? So in this particular case, I would need to find $18,400 in the first year, $17,000 in the second year, 16, and it rolls down, and then I can start seeing those claims. So those deductions that I get once the property starts producing positive income off the back of that story. So if I'm paying down that debt quicker, putting money in offset accounts and so forth, I'm going to see that benefit. And this is obviously why we do it, because it's the capital growth story that we're assuming that we want to create as part of that story. Now it gets better. We can now start to obviously put two scenarios side by side in our comparison tool. So let's assume exactly the same thing here, and with negative gearing and without negative gearing. The only thing I have done is I've made the assumption that this is a new property. And as a new property, I don't believe I'm going to get the same growth rate, and I'm going to be prosecuting this throughout the rest of this presentation, as opposed to what I would get in an established area if I've selected the right location of where that property lives from a land component point of view and a scarcity component point of view. And so just with a 1% difference in terms of what that story, and I've even loaded up the rental yield because it's a new property, so they'll get a little bit higher rent, reduce some of the, holding costs as part of that as well. So, we can potentially say, well, let's reduce those holding costs down a little bit because it's a new property, but you can see then the comparison starts to play in, and then you can see the overall returns between the two properties. So it is fundamentally an important story to then look at, obviously, a 268% return versus a 396% return. And you can see over that 30-year period, the potential difference in wealth that's created as well. So it is an important story. Show of hands if everyone got some learnings out of that, got some knowledge. Thank you for the love hearts. Thumbs up. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully that's helping in terms of understanding that. Now, I've got a little treat for you, hot off the press as well. So I'm just going to move this across and move to the next slide. We've got a brand new tool called the break-even calculator.